maybe you have felt that Sierra Leone was at the time a little bit unhappy that for the citizenship they have given out, that a lot of the brothers and sisters from the States were not coming back and investing. I know one person in particular came and got the citizenship from Sierra Leone and went right back to Ghana. We'll call that person.
Welcome to Exposing Sierra Leone, your weekly live stream and dive into the issues, news, and people shaping Sierra Leone and diaspora. Each week, join us as we engage with professionals, journalists, and various guests, or sometimes just the two of us, myself and Admire, to explore ways that we can propel our country forward, from in-depth discussions to enlightening interviews. We're here to uncover the stories that matter most. Tune in to be a part of the conversation as we work together to make a positive impact on Sierra Leone's future. In this episode, we are going to be discussing we're going to set the record straight on Sierra Leone's new citizenship program. We're debunking the lies and misinformation while answering your most pressing questions. All right, so I apologize for that. The first 15 seconds of the live stream, there was no sound. Now the sound is back. I know you guys were telling me there was no sound, but at least it lets you know that you guys are here and you guys were engaged. So thank you guys for joining. Let me know where you're watching from and if you can hear me now, because that's my bad. I started with no audio, so I got a bunch of messages when I flipped back and I saw that. So sorry about that. So we got Mokanji Film Production is watching from Switzerland. Shout out to you. I know Spirit Warrior is watching from somewhere in the States. ZQQ I think is watching from the States too. We got our good friend Aisha Ladan, or Aisha is it Rahman? Sorry. I actually don't know your actual real last name. I always called you Aisha Ladan from your YouTube name. But you can hear, I know you're watching from Cali. Spear Warriors watching from Cali. ZQQ watching from Brooklyn. All right, cool. So as I mentioned, today we're going to talk about the citizenship program in Sierra Leone, and we're going to have some updates. So as you guys saw, I played a little bit of a clip from the interview that was done with Dynast. Dynast is one of the 6 approved tour operators that is bringing folks to Sierra Leone for citizenship. So I think that interview was enlightening. It was interesting. If you guys want to check it out after this live stream is over, feel free to look in the description. There's a link to that live stream where he was interviewed. I have additional information and insight after speaking to someone since before. Some of you said, so there's more clips to share. Don't worry. I'm going to share some more clips. That one was more about the idea that the Sierra Leone government put the citizenship program on pause because what the person who was speaking there, who was doing the interview, mentioned was that a lot of folks get their citizenship and don't come back to Sierra Leone, right? We talked to many folks on this platform here, and I've spoken to folks personally who are living in Ghana, who got their Sierra Leone citizenship and are just living in Ghana and have not been back to Sierra Leone since. So there was some thoughts apparently that Dynast had posted about the fact that the Sierra Leone government was probably a bit upset about that, and that was probably had something to do with the program being put on pause. I will say that that was a little bit of speculation from a number of different people. Dynas isn't the only person who felt that way. And apparently there had been some rumblings about that particular challenge. So it looks like the new program will potentially solve for that a bit. And, you know, there are some other things that coincide with it that we want to go through in just a moment. Okay, so just to kind of give you guys some context, what exactly are we going to be talking about today? So again, we're gonna review the program itself, but there were 3 or 4 main questions that people were asking me. Number one, what's required for the second visit in the process after you paid $4 or $5K to go for the first visit? Because we do know there's a second visit. So what's required for a second visit? What are the additional costs? So we're going to address that today. The second question that came up a lot was which countries qualify under ECOWAS or West Africa in order for you to get your citizenship. And then there was a question about the minimum DNA percentage required to qualify. That information was actually given to me before. I just forgot to share that with you all in the last live stream, so I will be doing that. So this is the update you've been waiting for, and this is a continuation of the first live stream where I broke down Sierra Leone's updated citizenship options. So before we get into that, I want to play another real quick clip from that interview where Dynas talks about some of the updates and the and some of what he understood the updates to be as a certified tour operator.
So you have to come twice. You have to come twice. So every April and November, you have the opportunity to come. Then the following April or November, that's when you get your actual passport. So if you come in April, this April, I'm bringing a group this April.
Okay.
So when you come this April, you'll get your passport the following April.
So that's interesting. That specific detail, I haven't heard that one described that way. What I understood is that if you came in November, you could potentially just come in the April, that next group, or if you came in April, you should be able to come in November. So now Dynas is dealing directly with the Sierra Leone government. He is a certified tour operator. I think we have to confirm that particular detail because from what I understood, you could come on the next particular trip. It didn't have to be if you did it in April, you have to wait till the following April. From my understanding, if you came in April, you could come back in November. So I think that's one piece that we would just need to clarify, but I just wanted to call that out. And then let me get back to this video, some of the other details that he mentions.
So you have to wait a year.
Okay. I think that's fair. All right.
That and the fee for that goes towards that. The actual government fee, they raised it at $600, which is fair to me. In my eyes, it's fair.
So that's another thing there that we never spoke about previously, and that the idea of the government fee that you have to pay, separate from the tour fee that you pay, which is going to be $4 or $5K total. There is a government fee that you're going to pay to process the paperwork and everything, and that's $600. For context, for me, the version of citizenship that I received, being that both my parents were born in Sierra Leone, I paid $100, which is actually about the cost of what it is now, but I paid $100 6 years ago. Through that process, I paid that to expedite the process. So just so you know, yeah. So Aisha, who's very knowledgeable on this topic, said, when I spoke to him on the phone, you can come on your own with a not with a group, but yes, clarification would be best. Meaning on that second trip, you can come on your own, not with a group. She's saying it's that you come on your own in April or November, not sure. ZQQ says the 600 seems like a lot. Have you ever tried to get American citizenship? Ask them how much it costs, even just to get a visa. How much money you got to have in your bank account? I know it's a completely different country, but 600 is not that bad, to be honest with you.
Outside of that, everything's still the same as far as the documents they want. Oh, also, they're now opening.
I think it is important to mention that the documents that you have to fill out are exactly the same, which means those folks who have gone through this process to fill out documentation don't have to fill out new documentation. So that's an important new element to discuss.
up where you can use more DNA companies. So at first it was just African ancestry. Now you can use ancestry.com,
23andMe, and a few others. So now let's get into the review and the update. So I'm going to share my screen. We're going to go back to what we used to do when I used to do these presentations. You know, because that was something that I thought is going to be that was helpful to give visual representations of what we're talking about. And so I worked on this morning. But before I do, a couple of things. So Aisha is saying the 600 is not just for citizenship. It's a process. It's an entire week-long event. She's also mentioning the U.S. green card cost family members about $15K. So that's the point, right? I'm trying to make is that I know it seems people are like, whoa, that's a lot of money, $600. But just if you ever ask someone what it's like to try to become a citizen in the United States or elsewhere, that is why illegal immigration is so big in this country, because it is very, very difficult to become a citizen in the United States. So ZQ says, I'm not trying to be an American, and given our history, we shouldn't be paying all that. Yeah, I mean, I guess that given the history, and okay, by the way, this is something that came up in my discussions with folks, because, you know, these are not my words, but based on this comment, I think it's a perfect timing to discuss this. There's an idea of entitlement from folks that are coming back to the continent of Africa, where they feel like they should just be given citizenship for free. And you have to imagine every country has a system in place for how they determine citizenship, right? And when they go out of that process, right, they rewrite the Constitution to allow for new members to become citizens. They are already bending what was in place. For example, an amendment to the Constitution made it so that I could become a citizen. That same amendment made it so that many of you can become citizens. That in and of itself is a huge thing. But many people feel that's not enough. And so in this particular instance, right, what ZQ is saying, they feel it's not enough. And there are a lot of people on the continent which disagree with that. And they feel like it's more than enough. And I think we as Americans sometimes have what other people see as entitlement. And maybe we may feel like there's disenfranchisement. We've already dealt with enough. We want to have a homeland. And we expect that that moving back home, we shouldn't have to deal with all of these additional hurdles to jump through to become citizens. And that's fine. I mean, that's how some people believe and what they believe and think. But I think there are many people on the continent that don't feel that way. Aisha makes a good point. I don't devalue Sierra Leone because it's a poor country. Some people feel entitled. Okay. She said it's an honor to me to have it. They don't have to do this. They're doing it just for us. So NJ Grant saying, what's happening? What's happening? What's up? What's up? I think that's a what's up, what's happening, not a literal what's happening, right? All right, cool. So now we are going to get into the presentation for today. I got a lot to review. Let me just make sure I'm not missing any comments on IG. People keep jumping in and out. Have we surveyed the individuals as to why they weren't coming back? Any challenges? You know what? Let me address that question really quickly, because that's a good question before I get into the presentation, because that is a good question. So Lydia Atira asked this question. Have we surveyed those individuals as to why they weren't coming back? Any challenges? So yes, this is anecdotal. I haven't spoken to everyone, but as you guys can imagine, many of the subscribers to the YouTube channel are folks that have gone through the citizenship process. And I understand it's about 500 or so folks or more who have gone through this process. And many of those folks I have spoken to in person, whether in Sierra Leone or in Ghana. And there are a number of different reasons they cite as to why they have not come back to Sierra Leone. The first of which is after they've gotten their citizenship, they have mentioned that there hasn't been a lot of follow-up on what you can do next. And because Sierra Leone's government hasn't fully digitized everything, it is hard to find information on investments and things like that, right? And so what they do find is that Ghana has become the place to go. right? So many people are moving, visiting, Dirty December, Dirty December, etc., right? And so these folks find themselves going to Ghana after going to Sierra Leone and seeing that it's more digitized. It's more, you have some more of the apps that you're used to. You have Uber, you have a competitor in Bolt, you have a competitor in Yango, you have ways to order things. It's Sierra Leone tends to be a little bit more analog. Coming in and out of the country to Sierra Leone tends to be a little bit more challenging, right? You know, our airport is on a peninsula. Our airport is on a what's covered by three sides? You guys will tell me. And so you have to cross water. I think it is a peninsula, actually. But anyway, you have to cross water to get to the capital city, right? That's obviously an issue for many people. Some people get seasick. Some people just don't like the process. And it does mean that it takes a while to get in and out of the country. We also have security fee that you have to pay to get in the country. And by the way, if you want to take a one of the private companies, the boats across the water, it's $45 each way, $25 to come in and out of the country as a security fee. So that is 90 plus 50. That is 100. Sorry, 45 plus 50. 45 plus 45 is 90. Yeah, 90 plus 50 is $140 to enter and leave the country. So those tend to be some of the deterrents. And then again, as Aisha is mentioning, transportation is one of those challenges. Also, the flight to Sierra Leone is in hotels and transportation, and it can be a bit expensive. And then I think one of the other challenges that people have is there are no direct flights to Sierra Leone. There are direct flights on Delta and United and maybe one other airline to Ghana. So these are the things that people cite as their challenges. Not to say that they aren't real challenges, and not to say that that's not a reason to get your citizenship and not to come back. But these are things that, as long as you know that some of the challenges that are available, there are many other benefits. And I'd like to talk about them before I move on, because there are way too many people talking trash about moving to Africa. So let me be very, very clear. Sierra Leone is my second home. I am building a multi-family house in Sierra Leone right now. I have invested in farmland in Sierra Leone, and I have another property that I inherited that I'm talk about later. So there are a lot of things that I'm doing in Sierra Leone and more, all right, to be very clear, because I see the potential there. Because you know who else sees the potential? There are many Indian nationals, foreign nationals moving to Sierra Leone. There are many Lebanese individuals that are multi-generational in Sierra Leone. You have many Chinese nationals living in Sierra Leone. And so with all of that, these folks have found a reason to go there and invest. Why wouldn't I? And why wouldn't I recommend you do it too? So to be very clear, yes, there are some challenges like every country has. For instance, this country has a challenge with mass shootings. This country has an issue with crime-ridden areas of this country being the United States. So you have your trade-offs, right? Some people forget when I go live and they start making phone calls. And sorry, so I got to dismiss a couple of calls on a couple of different devices. All right. So I hope that makes sense. So just to be very clear, I'm oily. Just to be very clear, you know, Sierra Leone's citizenship is well worth it. And I do think that people should focus on investing in Sierra Leone, as well as other countries in Africa, if you can. You know, if you have the finances, by all means, do it. But I can tell you, there are some serious benefits to investing in certain parts of Sierra Leone that I know that it's really hard. You'd be hard pressed to find that in Ghana and some other countries across the continent of Africa. So African Empress 101 says, have authentic African mentioned how much citizenship is, and if so, how much, please? So again, it's about $4,000 to $5,000 to come with a particular tour company, and about $600 in fees to pay through the process. If I'm not mistaken, that may increase the initial tour fees, but we'll get into some of the costs later. So Sheikhu Sharif says, we rush into programs with no strategic planning. There should be a whole department in charge of facilitating resettlements. I do agree that there should be a whole department in charge of facilitating resettlements. I am not going to be making any disparaging remarks about any government across the continent of Africa. The idea of free speech only matters in the United States. That is a constitutional right, an amendment in the United States, not the same anywhere else. So I do not speak ill of any governments. And yeah, and I won't agree or disagree with anybody's thoughts. Yes, that is for citizenship, and that is for citizenship. And you know, let me just get into this now because there are many questions coming up with what I should just be doing. One other thing, Okimute says, I think Sierra Leone should insist that those who get citizenship should have at least an investment or land there if possible. They shouldn't just take citizenship and not spend time there. That is the view of many Africans on the continent. That is a belief that many folks have. Let me say one more thing. I know I keep putting off going into this, but I think this is a really important thing. We as Americans, although, and I'm different, obviously, although I am from the Creole tribe, which is formerly enslaved Africans, you know, my parents did come under their own accord on an airplane in the 70s. So I'm not speaking for any particular group in the United States. I can only speak to what I hear. As someone who grew up identifying as a African American, Black American, you know, I've heard things from either side. I've heard things from Africans who live on the continent or who live in America, and I've heard things from Americans. And one of the things that I think that there's a disconnect on is people sometimes on the continent feel like people in the diaspora have privileges that they don't realize that they have. I will tell you, I myself, I'm personally grateful to have the blue passport, and now I also have a green passport. But that blue passport allots me a lot of affordability, or affords me a lot of things that I could not have had I only had my Sierra Leone passport, number one. Number two, I am under no belief that any country owes me anything. That is the United States, and that is also Sierra Leone. But I am in the minority in that thought process. Many people think that governments owe them something. And so what you have is folks from the other side saying they don't owe you anything. And so what we have to be careful of, and you know, it was alluded to earlier, is the idea that you just be awarded citizenship. So that's a belief system that I've heard people say. And also one of the other things is in order to generate wealth, it is very hard to do so in the United States. Very, very hard to do so in the United States. Let's not get it twisted. But the United States has a system of credit and the ability to, if you do things in terms of paying your bills on time, et cetera, and, you know, obviously dealing with redlining and other things, but in general, wealth creation is available to the average person if you have knowledge and you are willing to work towards getting some information and working on it. Many folks on the continent, in order to generate wealth, it has to be a lot of times through ill-gotten means, right? And most people look to America as people who've had all the access and all they do is complain. I'm just telling you what it sounds like coming from folks on the continent, hearing Black Americans complain about stuff on the continent of Africa, just being honest. And then you have folks in the United States who feel like Africans come here with their nose in the air, thinking that they're better than, taking jobs, all those kinds of things. I think if we always operate with these kinds of viewpoints, instead of understanding where the other one comes from, we're never going to advance as a global diaspora and Africans living on the continent. You know, together we can do a lot, but if we continue to remain separated, we're only going to continue to have problems. So I think we need to all get out of this entitlement mindset. That happens to be an American mindset. And really that came from the Europeans, the way they feel they're entitled to land that's not theirs and to all kinds of other things. That actually, I think, to be honest, has been pushed onto us. That's a part of how we now feel living in the United States. Anyway, I got off on a tangent, but I think it's important to talk about that because I think so many people get it wrong. So Aisha says she's going to try to establish a repatriation committee or community. We can't wait for governments to do things for us. That'll take time. Americans in Ghana did it themselves. They sure have. Many different communities. People are going to Ghana isn't new. They have a big head start, and it's setting the example. That is true too. African Empress, thank you, bro. I have, if you have a list of the prices, as I've heard, 140,000 for citizenship. Geez. All right, let's talk about it, because now I can get into the presentation, because I want to talk about this a little bit. All right, so thank you guys for being patient. I wanted to go through some of the comments in real time. So there are some other stories we're going to go through today, things that are happening around Sierra Leone. These are the other stories that hopefully we'll get a chance to touch on as we go through it. I haven't even gotten a chance to introduce myself. So I am Joe Hatagwa. I am the founder of Authentic African. I, in partnership with Sierra Leoneans Killing It, like to go live once a week where we talk about things happening in Sierra Leone or Sierra Leoneans in the diaspora. I am an American-born Sierra Leonean, and I am a dual citizen of Sierra Leone and the United States. And so I run Authentic African. The platform is meant to help people visit, move, and invest in the continent of Africa, and also share the stories of what's happening in both worlds so we can better understand each other. Admire Demo is the founder of Sierra Leoneans Killing It. She's not joining us this week, but she'll be joining us on future live streams. She is a licensed hair braider. She runs Sierra Leoneans Killing It, has been running it since I think 2015, if I'm not mistaken, 2014. And she's been doing an amazing job of highlighting Sierra Leoneans. We met when she had me on her platform to talk about Authentic African back in 2020 during the global sickness. And so early last year, her and I got together and we decided we're going to start doing this podcast to help people understand what is going on in Sierra Leone. All right. So if you haven't already, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share with anybody you know. Turn on post notifications for all the platforms associated. That's all Sierra Leoneans Killing It and all Authentic African. We're going to keep you up to speed with anything Sierra Leonean. And then, of course, my goal is to talk about the broader continent of Africa, which I usually do on Monday live stream, and then all my posts on Instagram. And then, of course, Sunday live streams are dedicated to Sierra Leone. All right, so let's talk about this citizenship update. So again, today we're going to be debunking the lies of Sierra Leonean citizenship. We're going to talk about the three things that I mentioned we were going to talk about before: what's required for the two-step process, how much you have to pay, what countries, what's the minimum DNA percentage, and then we're going to do a review. Or we're also going to do a review, and then we're going to get into some other news. So let's review. Here are all the confirmed and alleged current pathways to citizenship in Sierra Leone. So they have the naturalization process. So living in Sierra Leone for at least 5 years, following the law and contributing to the country's development. That naturalization process, most countries have a version of that. Most countries, as well as Sierra Leone, require you to get a visa to enter the country first. And then through that process, you can apply for citizenship through naturalization. Next of which is citizenship via descent, meaning you were born outside of Sierra Leone to a parent who was or is a citizen of Sierra Leone. Again, both my parents were born in Sierra Leone. I was conceived in the United States, born in the United States, and so I got my citizenship through descent. Then there is the third option that is absolutely recognized by the by the Sierra Leonean government, which is why there are 3 check marks beside it. There's the African Diaspora Accession. And this is tracing DNA heritage to Sierra Leone through one of the companies that have been approved, and also coming to Sierra Leone through a certified local tour operator. Now, to touch on the point that African Empress 01 had asked about, if you have a list of the prices, I've heard it's 140,000 for citizenship. There was a press release, not at all stamped by the Sierra Leone government, from what I understand, has also been denounced by certain members of the Sierra Leone government, but there is no proof of any ties to the Sierra Leone government for this particular element. And this, so this is in particular the fast track naturalization and the heritage naturalization. So the fast track naturalization, they're saying if you invest $140,000 in a program that grants you citizenship in 90 days, and then there was this heritage naturalization, investing $100,000 in a program that grants citizenship within 60 days to people with African ancestry. Again, this stirred up a lot of controversy when this came out. We don't know who and how. If you look at the information on it, it is from somebody from South Africa who wrote the press release. And so, and it seems like the information that you're supposed to reach out to are people in South Africa. So not even in Sierra Leone. So this is something that many people were upset about. There's a lot of conversations, about this. And it stirred up a lot of controversy. We talked about this on a number of occasions, and not 100% sure if people can get citizenship through these two options. I don't know about this, and I don't recommend these two options. That's why they have red question marks next to them. I recommend the 3 check marks. That's what I recommend. Okay, so that's just a review, right, of the 3 confirmed ways and the 2 alleged ways that you can become a citizen of Sierra Leone. These are the pathways to citizenship. Now let's also review what we discussed last Monday. I can't even believe it's been about 6 days so far since we reviewed this. So the new updates for the becoming a citizenship of Sierra Leone via African Diaspora accession. So here's what we discussed last week. 1, there's 3 additional companies that qualify for DNA ancestry. So again, it's no longer just African ancestry. It's also Ancestry DNA. It's also 23andMe, and it's also CRI Genetics. These are now the 4 companies that you can do your DNA testing through that qualify for citizenship in Sierra Leone. Separately from that, there are 6 approved tour operators that you must go to Sierra Leone with, and they had to be approved by the the Tour Operator Association of Sierra Leone. So that is VSL, Visit Sierra Leone Travel. That is Tourism is Life Tours. That is IPC Travel. That is Danfo. That is Salon Hidden Gems. And that is the African Ancestry Experience, the African Ancestry Family Reunion. These are the 6 companies that are approved tour operators as the Tour Operator Association of Sierra Leone. Apparently, there are 2 to 3 pending applications as we speak. They are working through being tour operators in Sierra Leone. Eventually, you may be able to be to get your citizenship through them. The other piece to it is that 2 trips are now required. You used to only require 1 trip. Now a second trip is required to get your citizenship. And then lastly, it used to only be African ancestry and specific tribes from Sierra Leone. Now, as you can see, it's DNA from any West African country can now make you a citizen of Sierra Leone. All right. Hopefully that is a good review. If you weren't aware of all of this, now you're aware. These are some of the things that have changed with the citizenship and what we talked about last week. Now, I had a couple questions out to a couple of tour operators, and I hadn't been able to get those answers before Monday's live stream, but I've gotten the answers since. So I do want to go through some of the additional pieces that you guys have been asking. But before I do, a point of clarification. This goes back to this whole idea of people feeling misled, swindled, etc. So it's come to my attention that there's been a lot of what Professor Scott Galloway says is S-posting on the internet about the Sierra Leone citizenship process, and people upset about the process, and people in particular upset that they did not receive citizenship in November. So I would like to address this sentiment because some of it comes from folks who did not attend. And then I have heard some of it apparently is coming from folks who did attend the November trip. But I've talked to tour operators, and there's a couple of things that I have been told by those tour operators, more than one. Number one, I've been told that it was clearly stated by at least 2 tour operators, potentially all 6, but at least 2 tour operators. 3 main things were told to people before they bought their tickets and before they took their trip to Sierra Leone. Number one, they were told there was no guarantee that they would be grandfathered in and they would automatically get a passport. That is what I was told by a couple of tour operators, that they told all their people who were coming, they're going to fight for it. They're going to work on it, but they're going to try. I was also told, secondly, that they were told there is new legislation that was being revamped and they would still try to get them under the old law, but the new legislation was stating that there was a potential there might be another hold. Now, to be clear, last April, there was no trips to Sierra Leone for citizenship. It was put on hold last April. So last November was the time that they determined they were going to allow people to come back, and folks were apparently notified, according to the tour operators that I spoke to. I was also told that the tour operators told these folks that there were the first trip would satisfy one of 2 trips that would be required if that was to become the policy, because they had gotten some word earlier that the policy might be that you have to take 2 trips and that your first trip would satisfy the requirement for at least one of 2 trips, which we later learned that did end up becoming the new policy. So before we go any further, I want to be very clear that after speaking to some tour operators, those folks, or according to the tour operators, those folks who were planning to go in November, according to the tour operators, were given full clarification that there was no clarification, right? That they were still working to get through the details. They were still going to be able to come to Sierra Leone. There'd be naming ceremonies. There'd be cultural experiences. They weren't guaranteed that they'd be getting their passport. If anybody who's watching disagrees with that and doesn't think that that is the case, please comment and tell me what you were told. Because after speaking to folks, that is what I was told. So Gason, can you tell us who you went through and what you say you were told? So Gason says, hey, I was there, and that is 100% not true for my group. We were not told that there was even a chance that we wouldn't get it until we were already in Sierra Leone. We were told about the 2 trips in Sierra Leone. So that's Gason. Gason, who did you go with? And can you confirm which group you went with? So look, that is their particular stance. They went there. I happened to be around in November. I was not able to be a part of any of the information. But yeah, so Gason is also saying, I was told that at a minimum, we'd be getting citizenship. It was never a possibility that there would be nothing on that trip. Wow. Okay. Well, that is what, and I hope I'm pronouncing the name right. Is it Gason or Guyson? Looks like Guyson. Oh, wow. It's Jason. Sorry, Jason. I really messed it up. I really apologize. African ancestry also, okay, his name is pronounced Jason. So African ancestry. So Jason went with African ancestry and says he was not told by African ancestry. Okay, I did not speak to African ancestry, but who I spoke to said that African ancestry made it clear. So according to Jason, it was not made clear. So this is something that their particular tour operator, African ancestry, they said did not make it clear, unfortunately, according to them. All right. So I want to answer some of those questions that came up in the last conversation. There were many questions that came up, and I want to answer those questions. So the first one was, what does each trip entail now that applicants must visit Sierra Leone twice? From what I understand, coming from one or two of the tour operators, is combined answers. The trip includes a cultural immersion, naming and ceremony included, heritage workshop, and official documentation submission. That is the first trip. The second trip scheduled for after the 1-year waiting period. Okay. So remember, Dynas mentioned the 1-year waiting period. So those who came in November cannot come back in April. This is in writing here. They actually have to wait till November. So I'm glad we can clarify that. I didn't fully read the answers to these questions before I started the live stream. I wanted to make sure I got them in here and shared it with you. So there's a 1-year waiting period where you have to come back to Sierra Leone. So if you were there in November, you have to wait till the following November, not come back in April. And that is for final verification and passport issuance. So that's 1A. What does each trip entail? 1B was specifically about those folks who came in November. What is the process? Part 2, do they have to pay $4K again for another tour, or can they just come to Sierra Leone? Are there any additional requirements? If they come in April, is a guarantee that they will get their passport. So here are some of the answers to those questions. Number 1, no, they do not have to pay $4,000 again for another tour. They can return to Sierra Leone independently as long as they fulfill the required 2 visits within a 12-month period. So is it, 1-year waiting period? The second trip scheduled after a 1-year waiting period. So it sounds like this is worded incorrectly, but it's the 2 trips with the 1-year waiting period. Okay, 1-year waiting period, not 2 trips within a year. It's in the 1-year waiting period. The second trip will be focused on completing any remaining documentation and ideally receiving the passport. I put ideally because this is Africa, okay? So things sometimes don't happen with speed, okay? There may be a minor administrative fees, but another full tour payment is not required. I think this is where the $600 goes into play. All right, so there's some things coming up. I want to make sure I address them. So Aisha says, now it's clear. Jason says, wow, thanks for the clarification. Next of November then, thanks. Aisha says, makes sense since it was about $200 for us when I went. That's a lot of process in a short amount of time. Okay, so meaning there was 200 people, not $200 when she went. And Spirit Warrior seems to think that it's funny when every time I say this is Africa. I just need to clarify some things for folks so you understand some things take time. This is Africa. So you just need to know some things take time and be aware. So why does it keep doing that? Sorry, it keeps cutting off the screen. So let me do this. Okay. So if they came in April, if you come in April, passport issuance is not guaranteed. The government ultimately decides the processing time, and delays are possible due to administrative or policy changes. However, meeting all the requirements increases the likelihood of receiving the passport within the expected time frame. So let me see if there's any other questions, comments, thoughts. African Empress says, sorry, did you answer my previous question? I missed it. So yeah, so the question you had asked is it $140,000? No, it is between $4,000 and $6,000 to come with one of the tour operators to Sierra Leone. They all have their own cost for whatever work that they do, right? So that is just a part of the work that they do. That's the charge, and some of that goes to the government, some of that goes to them. Then there looks like there is a $600 administration fee. Now you'll have to check with the tour operators if that's all included in the $4,000 or $5,000 that you're going to pay to go with one of the tour operators. They will let you know if that fee is included or if that is going to be a separate fee. Managing expectations is what we like to do here on Authentic African. So Africa takes colored people time to a new level, CPT, or Africa Man Time, I've heard, Salon Man Time. I've also heard Ghana Man Time. So all of it is available. There was a question about a birth certificate. African Empress 01 says, by the way, it's Joe. I'm Joe. Authentic African is the name of the platform. I do not call myself Authentic African. Sometimes I need to clarify that for folks. There are many folks who think that's what I call myself. No, that is the name of the platform. It's an Authentic African experience. My name is Joe or Joannis, Chief Bemba, Professor Bemba. The list of names go on, but Joe Hatagwa will suffice. So you're asking, can I get it if my mother's birthplace is on the birth certificate, or do I need more evidence? So, on your birth certificates, if your mother's birthplace is on your birth certificates, that might actually be enough. When I did it, I used a marriage certificate, my birth certificate. I mean, I came with way too many extra papers. I came with like 5 pieces of documentation, government documents that had my parents' birthplace on it. But I would say go to the do they even have this on the website? I will try to find this information and share it with you. Shoot me a note, shoot me an email to my email, and I will do my best to answer this question exactly what you need. And I'm imagining you fall under the group that is of not accession, but of descent, right? You're it's like your parents, one of your parents was born in Sierra Leone. If that's the case, shoot me a note and I will try my best to answer that particular question. Aisha is letting us know the tour fees are all inclusive. I guess that means it includes flight, lodging, some meals, and some transportation. So I think I answered your question now, right, African Empress? Okay, there you go. No problem, no problem. And King Joseph, it's Joe, not Authentic African. Okay, my email for those who want to message me. I do answer one-off questions, but if you have like a ton of questions, you do have to schedule a consulting session with me. But email is here on the bottom of the screen. So if you guys want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me there. Email is on the bottom of the screen. All right, let's get back to the presentation. I took some time to work on this morning. So, all right. So back to answering your questions. There was another question. What countries fall under West Africa, quote unquote? Does it include all ECOWAS countries? Does it also include the Sahel states like Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali? Now, this is a tough one to answer because West Africa typically includes all of these countries here: Benin, Burkina Faso, Cape Verde, Cote d'Ivoire, the Gambia, Ghana, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mali, Niger, Nigeria, Senegal, Sierra Leone, Togo. Sometimes people want to add Mauritania in there. Now, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. I don't know if you can see what I'm pointing on the screen. I guess you can't because this doesn't operate that way. Nope. Just look on the the top. The 2 of the biggest countries you see on the screen, and then one beneath them. These 3 countries have now formed a confederation, or what some people call the Sahel states. They're no longer included in ECOWAS. They officially left ECOWAS in January. So they're no longer a part of the economic community of West African states. They are their own confederation. They operate in their own manner. And they all have in common a military junta that took over and is in charge of those countries. What also I will mention is it is not a coup if the country wanted it. It's a revolution. Again, it's a coup if just a few people want it. It's a revolution if multiple people want it. I do just want to mention that for those of you who are unclear. So to answer the question, we don't know technically if your DNA comes from these 3 places, if it counts, but I would imagine it counts because technically it's West Africa, and that is where the transatlantic slave trade came from, and those countries are included. The idea of this process is meant to deal with folks who were taken during the transatlantic slave trade, or transatlantic trafficking trade, because these were not slaves, these were African people that were enslaved. So to be very clear, it's the transatlantic trafficking. So I'm not 100% sure, but I would imagine it includes these countries. But once you go through your DNA process, you can reach out to a tour operator, and the tour operators will be able to get you those answers directly from the country of origin. Sorry, the Sierra Leone. All right, so we're going to answer some more questions for you. Let me just make sure there aren't any more questions on screen, because I am doing this blindly sometimes. So let's see. Oh, you guys could see the arrow. Okay, cool. Thanks, Jason. All right, so just to make sure that we don't lose the bottom of the screen here. So what is the minimum percentage of DNA from any of the approved countries required to qualify? So applicants must have at least 51% ancestry from West Africa to qualify for Sierra Leone citizenship through DNA. As I mentioned before, the DNA results must come from an approved testing company, such as African Ancestry, Ancestry.com, 23andMe, and from what I understand, this fourth one is CRI Genetics, Cellular Research Institute Genetics. And of course, it must indicate majority West African lineage. So 51%. So what does that mean? Apparently, from what I hear, Ancestry DNA is now telling people what tribes they are from. But here's what you need to know. Let's say you find out you are 25% Nigerian of Nigerian descent from the Yoruba tribe. And then you find out you are 10% Wolof from Senegal. That is 35%. If that is all the West African DNA and heritage you have, you do not qualify. So you have to add up all of them to equal majority of your ancestry. So that is an example where you don't qualify. Here's an example where you would qualify. Let's go back to that same example. 25% from the Yoruba tribe of Nigeria, 10% from the Wolof tribe of Senegal, and let's also say you have another 21% from the Mende tribe of Sierra Leone. If I did my math correctly, that is 51%, and in that case, you qualify. So yes, so Shani 305, shout out to Miami, saying, so pretty much if you don't qualify, you don't waste your money, get tested. Well, obviously you would get tested to know if you would even go on these trips anyway. But yeah, I guess that is true. Yeah, I mean, obviously you wouldn't want to travel. You can't even go through this process unless you've done the DNA process. So you wouldn't even get to the part where you're spending any money to go. But I understand your sentiment, Shani. Well received. All right. Any questions before we get back to this topic? King Joseph said, okay, Joe, depending on the tour companies, people may have to pay for their own travel to the continent of Africa. Yes, I heard that as true. Most, though, cover from New York to the continent of Africa. Sweet Pleasures is saying Ancestry DNA. It used to be Ancestry.com. I think they've rebranded as Ancestry DNA. You know what? Let me remove this from the screen so you guys can see me. I think they've rebranded as Ancestry DNA. King Joseph says that's a well-done presentation. Thank you. Oh, it's not even done yet. Well, thank you, though. I appreciate it. I use a template. If I'm not going to lie to you, I use my own template, but yeah. Mike DeBradley says you should qualify for just being from the diaspora. Okay. I mean, again, that's part of the entitled discussion that was happening before, right? Remember, countries don't have to just offer citizenship, right? We should be grateful that they're even offering us citizenship. I myself am grateful that I was able to get citizenship, because there was a time where the Constitution of Sierra Leone did not allow someone like myself even to get citizenship. I am fully grateful that I was able to get citizenship, and that the United States doesn't require me to denounce my citizenship from the United States in order to get dual citizenship with Sierra Leone. In fact, the United States does not require you to denounce any of your citizenships. Sorry, it does not require you to announce your citizenship if you get any other citizenships. Apparently, you can get up to 5, 10, whatever, if you want to, from what I understand, and you don't have to denounce it. Okay. African Empress says, I am based in the UK. Which Ancestry DNA company can I use? Just check on their websites, and they'll let you know if they can mail you a kit. These are all companies, as far as I understand, based in the US, but they mail their kits to all over the world, as far as I understand. So just go to the websites. African Ancestry is the one that's Black owned. So if you want to support a Black owned business, African Ancestry of the 4 is the only one that's Black owned. 23andMe is Ann Wojcicki, as I mentioned before. Her sister is one of the founders of Google. So she don't need your money. And they also come second generation wealthy. Their parents did really well for themselves financially. In fact, Google was started out of her garage, her family's garage. So they don't really need it. Ancestry DNA, I will say one thing about Ancestry is they help people find other relatives in their database. If people want to be reached out to, they can do that. So, you know, I think it's something to think about. Something to think about. And Aisha, the expert in the topic, who is a she does archives and ancestry. She said all of those work in the UK. So I guess they'll just mail it to you in the UK. Badina BB says, if the internet info is correct, Burkina Faso has offered visa-free access for diaspora Africans who are descendants of those trafficked via the Middle Passage to visit. That is to visit, yes, not to get citizenship. But I also have heard they have some kind of citizenship program that they're working on. I don't know about that. I've also heard Benin is working on a citizenship program. At a later date in time, I will go live about all the different citizenship programs that are being offered. I did one on Ghana citizenship, and I'm doing a few on Sierra Leone. So I want to continue to make sure you guys are aware. And shout outs to African Empress, who is also thanking Aisha for additional insights. Yes, Aisha, thank you for the additional insights. I should have probably just brought you on the live stream. I don't know why I didn't ask you if you were available to come on the live. Okay. And this is how I know African Empress 01 is in the UK, because they wrote brilliant. That's how you know. Okay, brilliant. That is a UK thing, isn't it? All right. So, and Shawnee 305 on IG says, because I'm considering relocating to Sierra Leone. Well, yeah, I mean, I definitely recommend visiting a few times first, especially if you're from Miami. The weather will be similar, but there are so many other differences for sure. So that for sure, I would definitely recommend visiting the continent before ever making the decision to move. I recommend visiting multiple times and for extended periods of time, so you get a close enough to an idea of what it might be like, especially a country like Sierra Leone, because it is one thing to have a budget to be able to move around and live the luxury life for about 2-3 weeks, 2 weeks, 1 week. It's another thing to try to maintain that kind of a lifestyle living there for a long time. I myself am someone who's been traveling to Sierra Leone under different financial circumstances than when I lived in Sierra Leone. So let me just give you what happened for me. Now, I am, as I mentioned, a Sierra Leonean American. I have been going to Sierra Leone since, for the first time as an adult, because I did go in 1986, but of course I don't remember that instance. I did go in 2010 for a funeral. I went again in 2017 for the 20-year or 25-year anniversary of my grandmother's passing. And then I went regularly starting in 2018, twice per year. And from 2017 through 2020, I was operating under very different financial circumstances. I could rent a car for $100 a day, however many times I wanted to. I can stay $200 a night for 10 days. You know, I was spending lavishly when I would come to Sierra Leone. And then I moved to Sierra Leone under completely different circumstances. After living on the continent 2 years, working on the continent, no longer having clients and or full-time employment from the United States, and living on, you know, income from my business, which doesn't generate a ton of profit. And I will tell you, living in Sierra Leone was very different under those financial circumstances. So for those of you who are planning to move to Sierra Leone full time, I do want to make sure you do have multiple streams of income. Mike has an interesting question. Do you think Africa will ever unite as one? There's a couple reasons why I am skeptical of that fact, but I'm hoping for it. I think it's going to take a long time and it's going to take a lot of work. So I think there will probably be federations that come together. Maybe eventually, once those federations come together, then they can build one giant country. But here's why it'll be difficult to see a United States of Africa, as Kwame Nkrumah, as Gaddafi, as Thomas Sankara all dreamed about. One, each president is the king of their own fiefdom. Some have come in and taken over in a coup. Some have taken over in a revolution. Some have overstayed their welcome. Some are recently moved in and fully have the support of the people. Other people are democratically elected. Other people were democratically elected, and they have border problems, neighbor problems, civil wars happening in many places. And the African Union itself has had a hard time fixing some of the challenges. And that is a governing body that has representatives from each country. However, there is some slivers of hope in this process. Again, as I mentioned, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger are working to build a country. They're looking to do that. They have a confederation. There's also an East African community of a number of different countries in East Africa that have been talking about doing this as well. So there's a potential, if you have this East African community and it does really well financially, because that's what has to happen. People make moves when they see money. So if the East African community actually comes together and it does well, and if the Sahel states come together and continue to do what they've been doing, then I feel like other countries may want to follow suit and do something similar. For example, from what I remember, there's the Mano River Union, which is a river that connects, if I'm not mistaken, Cote d'Ivoire, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea, if I'm not mistaken. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Each of these operate as independent countries, but they're a group within the subset of ECOWAS. If they were to come together, which would be very difficult, but if they were to come together, then you could see where there could be patches in these different groups coming together. It's very unlikely, but if these patches and groups come together, instead of 54 or 55 countries, depending on who you ask, there would be maybe like 6 or 7. Then the leaders of those 6 or 7 countries could potentially come together and say there's one country, and they all have their own states. Now, that would also mean that a lot of things would have to be figured out. And we're going to talk about ECOWAS's money in a second, because there is a potential that when you start to operate under one currency, you start moving in that kind of direction. All right. You said, Mike, so Mike said at least West Africa. That's still going to be tough, because also there's a language barrier too. So that's the thing is you have Francophone countries and Anglophone countries. So in West Africa, let's go back to this presentation. On screen here, what you can see, and apparently you guys can see my screen, so you can see my arrow. Sierra Leone, Liberia are 2 countries connected, but are surrounded by countries that speak French. Ghana speaks English. Togo and Benin are former French colonies, if I'm not mistaken. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger were also former French colonies, but they've done away with all the French stuff. Nigeria is a former British colony. So with the whole divide and conquer thing, and even this, Senegal surrounds the Gambia. Senegal is a former French colony, and they speak a lot of French and Wolof. The Gambia speaks English and Wolof because this is a British colony. This is a little yellow strip here. So it's very difficult for us to come together as one, because one, we don't even have a common language. The East African community, as they're working to come together, at least they all speak Kiswahili. So, which is a combination of about 7 different languages. And so they all speak Kiswahili. Apparently it was started in Tanzania, but it's spoken very heavily in Kenya. It's spoken in Uganda. It's spoken in many East African countries. And this East African community, or East African Federation, as some people are calling it, has a higher likelihood. Now with West Africa, could we use Pidgin or Creole as a language? Potentially, because many of us speak it throughout the Anglophone West African countries. In Ghana, they have a version of Pidgin, very different from our other versions of Pidgin, but they have their own. It is only spoken as like a form of people like code switching. In Nigeria, that's how many of the tribes communicate with each other, right? Through Pidgin and English. And in Sierra Leone, Creole is actually a written language. It is taught in school. And it is where Pidgin has come out of across some of the other West African languages. The other West African Pidgins came from Creole, which was derived from Sierra Leone. All right. But Dina Bibi says, allegedly some, okay, so let me go back to that. So language, a common language makes it easier in order to group people together, right? As big as China is, if I'm not mistaken, about the size of all of the ECOWAS. They have always spoken either Mandarin or Chinese or some form of it for like over 1,000 years. And so that is how you've been able to keep such a large landmass to be able to follow one accord. If you have one language, it's a little bit easier to communicate. You don't always see yourselves as different groupings. Unfortunately, across Africa, we've always had our tribal belief systems. Across North America and South America, there were a lot of different tribal belief systems, and they didn't have to divide to conquer. They just had to conquer because we all spoke different languages. If you look at China, they only ever got Hong Kong. They couldn't even fully get through China. And I do think a lot of that had to do with one language. And to understand a culture, you need to understand their language. And so if that is true, then how else can you make a country unless you have a common language? By the way, these are my thoughts. I mean, I haven't really spoken that out loud to many people, but that's what I believe. All right, cool. So let's move on to some of the other stories from around Sierra Leone. First things first. So last week, Sunday, we talked about the cocaine cowboys of West Africa and how Sierra Leone has been getting a bad name because for some reason, coke dealers like to bring cocaine through Sierra Leone to go to Europe. It is a problem. It's not problemo. This is a problem. And many people have been discussing it. And in one particular instance, which is probably one of the wildest of them all, was the ambassador to Guinea of Sierra Leone is alleged to have had a car with cocaine and cash on its way from Sierra Leone to Guinea. Let me give you the key details of the scandal if you weren't aware, just so you're up to speed. Number one, reports say they were up to all kinds of different numbers about how much cocaine. Some reports say there were 7 suitcases containing suspected cocaine, which were found in the vehicle. Guinea had declared Sierra Leone's ambassador, Alimami Bangura, pictured on the left. Guinea is on the far right is the leader of Guinea. He took over in a coup a few years back. Guinea has declared Sierra Leone's ambassador, Alimami Bangura, persona non grata and ordered him to leave the country. Sierra Leone's government claims they have recalled the ambassador for consultations, and he should be in Sierra Leone. Also, a prominent businessman, Alhaji Ba, is implicated in the scandal through his associate, who was also arrested with the ambassador's vehicle. And some people say $100,000 in cash. Some people say $250,000 in cash. Apparently, it was 6 figures in cash was also seized along with drugs in that vehicle, allegedly. Now, Sierra Leone, and so that's the background on this story. Sierra Leone and Guinea have signed a memorandum of understanding to conduct a joint judicial investigation into a high-profile drug-related matter. So the key details of the agreement is the MOU was signed on February 13th, just a few days ago, aligning with the United Nations Convention on Transnational Organized Crime of the year 2000. That was when that particular whatever United Nations treaty was signed, or whatever it was, not treaty, but law, whatever it is. Sierra Leone's ambassador to Guinea, Alemami Bangura, has returned to Freetown after being confined in Guinea for nearly 3 weeks. The ambassador was accompanied by Sierra Leone's Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Timothy Kaba. The agreement follows diplomatic engagements between the two countries to address the scandal. Ambassador Bangura and the head of Chancery are expected to brief Sierra Leonean officials on the details of the agreement and the next steps in the joint investigation. Implications of the agreement, of course, enhanced cooperation, apparently transparency. There's a legal framework associated with it. And the legal impact is as follows. This cooperation could set a precedent for addressing transnational crime in West Africa, particularly drug trafficking. Any of the comments and thoughts? Okay, no other comments and thoughts on this in particular. I will address some of the additional questions from King Joseph in a second. So that's the update. Mr. Alemami Bangura is back in Sierra Leone, and the investigation is ongoing. I will keep you guys posted as more information comes to light. Now, that was one of the cocaine cowboy stories, and that is an update. We have another update on a much bigger story that has really got branches and legs and has been all over the world. The Guardian, which is probably the most high profile of all newspapers to report on this, has reported on this gentleman pictured here. If you guys don't remember, you know what? Let me just go through what the article alleges. So, apparently, according to the Dutch, he's a fugitive. His name is Johannes, which really sucks because my name is Johannes, Ledeckers. And they said he's one of Europe's most wanted drug lords and has been living in Sierra Leone for at least 2 years since December 2022. By the way, many accounts in Sierra Leone are saying this is not the same person. Just to speak for the other side, this person pictured here next to what looks like the president's daughter does not go by the name Johannes Ledeckers or Jos Ledeckers. Apparently, he has a different name within the country. He was sentenced in absentia, meaning he wasn't there, to decades in prison for crimes including large-scale cocaine trafficking and apparently ordering a murder. Again, I'm not saying this is you, my guy. Please. If I come up missing, we know why. I'm not saying this is you, but some people are saying it's the same person. He has been sentenced to 24 years in prison. Dutch police are offering a 200,000 euro reward for information leading to his arrest, and that was issued in September 2024. Dutch prosecutors confirmed in their minds that he had allegedly been living in Sierra Leone for at least 6 months, and that was at the time of December of 2024 when they said that's how long they thought he'd been living in Sierra Leone. Now, the person pictured in this image has high-profile connections in Sierra Leone. We don't know if it's the same person 100%. I cannot say that to be true. It is speculated that it is the same person. And what they're saying is he was seen attending the New Year's Day church service in January 2025 with Sierra Leone's presidential family, as shown in the footage that was actually posted by the First Lady. It was posted on Facebook. He is reportedly in a relationship with the president's daughter, Agnes Bio. That is reportedly they're engaged. There was some reports that for their engagement ceremony, Ira Star got 100,000, Tiwa Savage got 100,000. So that caused some controversy. Sources claim he's benefited from high-level protection in Sierra Leone. Sources are also saying he's gotten a diplomatic passport. He has diplomatic immunity. I also want to be very clear that Sierra Leone does not have an extradition treaty with Amsterdam. So they are not required to remove anyone from Sierra Leone to Amsterdam, including anyone who may have close connections to the first family of Sierra Leone, if the alleged things are true. Okay. So, evidence of presence in Sierra Leone. Multiple sources place him at a New Year's Eve party in December of 2022 at the Mamba Point Resort in Freetown. There's footage from a nightclub, Fracas, in December 22 that shows a person resembling him with a Happy New Year 2023 visibly in the background. Many people say he was also seen at a house party hosted by a Lebanese couple in Tokay Beach in December 2023. He was reportedly present at President Bio's farm in 2024, where footage shows him harvesting rice. So there are, according to this article from The Guardian, they say that there is proof that this is the same person and that he's been in Sierra Leone since 2022. The criminal background that this particular article calls out, it says he was sentenced to 24 years, as I mentioned, by Rotterdam court for trafficking 7,000 kilos of cocaine. Wow, 7,000 kilos of cocaine is a lot of cocaine. Armed robbery. I mean, for context, guys, when you're going on a flight, right, you can have a maximum of 23 kilos for your suitcase, right? So you guys get an idea. That's about 50 pounds. So 7,000 kilos. Let's see how many pounds of cocaine that is. For those of us who grew up in the non-British system, right, in these United States, 7,000 kilos to LBS. Okay, that is 15,432 pounds of cocaine is what he was sentenced for trafficking. He was also sentenced for armed robbery, and again, he was also sentenced for ordering a murder. Wow. Apparently, he received an additional 10-year sentence in Belgium in September 2024 for attempting to smuggle drugs via a port there in 2020. So Sierra Leone's response: Sierra Leone authorities initially denied knowledge of his identity and background. Police claim the man in the footage was identified as Omar Sharif and conducted raids, but failed to locate him. Now, this name, Omar Sharif, apparently is the name that has diplomatic passports in Sierra Leone, according to reports that I have read. The information minister stated that investigators were unaware or unsure of the individual, and had he been in the country for more than 6 months, they're not sure or unaware. International implications: Sierra Leone is a known transport point for cocaine trafficking from South America to Europe, based on all kinds of articles. You can read it. It's all online. The case has caused embarrassment for Sierra Leone, especially after cocaine was found in suitcases in an embassy vehicle in Guinea. Extradition request. The Dutch Justice Minister confirmed an extradition request had been sent to Sierra Leone, but remains unclear if he is still in the country. And so that is the story of this potential individual. So Sheikh Sharif says, if it's not him, why can't the person pictured make a press statement? Good question. Don't know the answer. Good question. Bill Nack says, this is beaucoup pounds. Yes, it is a lot. It is a lot of pounds. What did I say? 15,000 pounds? 15,432 pounds. 15,432.35 to be exact. Yikes. If that is true, right? He was indicted. He was sentenced. So technically they believe in both Belgium and in Amsterdam that he is guilty. They also believe that this is the same person. Many folks say this is not the same person. We'll leave it to you all to decide. That is not my job. I'm just here to report the news, guys. All right. So along with this story, there's something interesting that happened. Sierra Leone police have confirmed the arrest of a Dutch journalist, Sophie van Leeuwen, in Freetown. So in a recent development that has sparked international attention, the Sierra Leone police have confirmed that she was arrested. According to the Sierra Leone Association of Journalists, she was detained along the peninsula while she was in the company of local journalists, reportedly on suspicion of espionage and conducting documentary work without the necessary permissions. Now, Sophie, who serves as the Africa correspondent for RTL News, was allegedly in Sierra Leone for journalistic activities. A local journalist traveling with her indicated that Sophie had claimed to have accreditation from the Ministry of Information and Civic Education, or MOIS, as a foreign journalist. The journalist also mentioned that Sophie attended the ministry's last press briefing and asked questions during that session. Here's a statement. African Empress says people are starving and money running through Sierra Leone. Jeez. Well, yes, geez. So now, why is this important, right? Number one, I am not a journalist. When I come to Sierra Leone, I am not operating as a journalist. No espionage for me, just to be clear. Letting everybody know who's watching this back as a replay or watching this live. I am not a journalist. I am just making sure that people who are interested in coming to Sierra Leone know what's being reported in the news, and I just repeat the news back to them, to be very clear. So I don't need to get any journalist credentials because I am not a journalist. Just putting that out there, making that disclaimer to be very clear. All right, so Sierra Leone government, if you are watching this, just know that, okay? Just reporting on what I see. And when I say reporting, just reading, I should say, because I'm not a journalist, so I'm not reporting. All right, so why is this important, right? So the Sierra Leone Association of Journalism, or journalists, issued a press release on Friday, the 14th of February, on Valentine's Day, reminding all foreign journalists planning to work in Sierra Leone of the importance of notifying the journalists union of their presence and the nature of their journalistic work, in addition to obtaining the necessary clearance from government authorities. The SLAJ emphasized the reasons for this requirement, stating, "This is to ensure that the SLAJ is aware of your activities and can provide the necessary support, guidance, and protection should the need arise. Their role," they're saying our role, "is to uphold press freedom and safeguard the rights of journalists, including those visiting the country. The association encourages all foreign journalists to contact SLAJ upon arrival and before beginning their work in Sierra Leone. That way, you don't end up like this lady here." All right. Moving on to some of the other news of the day. Shout out to President Donald Trump of these United States. What has he done? He is going to deport at least 11 Sierra Leonean citizens out of the United States. The United States has formally informed the Sierra Leonean government of its intention to deport 11 individuals believed to be Sierra Leonean citizens. According to the MOIS, or the Minister of Information and Civic Education, Shanor Ba, the announcement was made during a press briefing on Tuesday. The United States of America has sent a notification regarding 11 individuals believed to be Sierra Leonean who are set to be deported. is what Minister Boss stated. While the identities of the specific details of the deportees remain undisclosed, the return to Sierra Leone is expected imminently. So, you know, shout out to ICE and the government of the United States, just, you know, deporting folks. That's all I got to say about that. I got nothing to say about that because I don't know the individuals who were deported, what they did or what the situation was, overstaying the visas, whatever. It is U.S. law. They are allowed to operate under U.S. law to deport people. That's just how it works. So it is what it is, I guess. I don't know. I'm going to leave that alone. I don't talk too much about American politics on this because I got a lot to say about these folks here, but I'm going to keep it. And by these folks, I mean those in power. But I have a lot to say about those in power across both parties. That's another conversation for another time. All right. So VP Jallow reaffirmed his commitment to the Economic Community of West African States single currency. This is interesting. As you guys know, in Europe, most European countries, the European Union, except for the UK, who, because of Brexit, have left and no longer use the euro. They use the pound now. But for a while, they were using the euro. And so similar ECOWAS currency will likely come into play. So he's reaffirmed Sierra Leone's unwavering commitment to the West African Monetary Zone and the broader Economic Community of West African States single currency initiative, emphasizing the nation's active role in fostering regional economic integration. Addressing delegates at the 53rd meeting of the Convergence Council of Ministers and the Central Bank Governors held in Freetown, Dr. Jallow underscored Sierra Leone's determination to overcome challenges and contribute to the realization of a unified West African economy. Speaking on behalf of President Julius Maada Bio, he warmly welcomed participants and encouraged them to explore Freetown's vibrant culture and historical significance during their stay. This is going to be huge. Hopefully, we'll be able to stabilize all of our currencies a little bit better. For example, when I moved to Ghana in December of 2020, Ghana's currency is called the cedi. For every $1, it was 6 cedis. By the time I revisited and returned again in January of this year or end of December of last year, it was $1 for every 15 cedis. So their currency is one of the worst performing in the world, dropping dramatically. Sierra Leone's currency has also undergone, it dropped in half over the last couple of years. So likely, if we combine our forces, hopefully we can have a more stable currency. That is the hope of the idea of an ECOWAS single currency. I, for right now, am in support of a single currency. I hope it does go through, and I hope it does stabilize the currency a bit more. Any other news? Is that it? Oh, First Lady of Sierra Leone, Dr. Fatima Maada Bio, has been elected of the Organization of African First Ladies for Development. The election took place during the 29th General Assembly in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Fatima Bio will serve a 2-year term from 2025 to 2027. Dr. Ana Diaz, the First Lady of Angola, was elected Vice President. They expressed their confidence in the leadership of both women and their commitment to the organization's mission. I think this has a lot to do with, Dr. Fatima Bio's many public statements that she's made that have gone really viral, and the programs that she's done in Sierra Leone. You have the Hands Off Our Girls. She has the program where she does sanitary napkins for people in all kinds of financial situations. She has spoken publicly about, how Africa has been taken advantage of by the West and by Europeans. There's one particular video where she was talking at some event, and that has gone viral everywhere. She also herself has gone viral many times on TikTok. And so, there are different views about how people view a first lady. I think generally outside of Sierra Leone and around the world, many people see her as a first lady who has really done a great job of promoting the country in a positive light. And so I think that this speaks to that. And so she was elected by this particular organization, and she'll be running it for 2 years. All right. So now let's get back to some of your questions and comments before we bring this thing to a close. All right. So when we were talking about Sierra Leonean citizenship and also Sierra Leone Africa becoming one state, there were a lot of conversations and questions that were coming up. So I want to address some of these questions now that I've gone through the presentation and I've giving you guys the news of the day in Sierra Leone. One thing, Badina Bibi says, allegedly some African countries limit descendants to citizenship in only one African country. I specifically heard that about Benin and Nigeria. I've heard that as well, but then I've also heard exceptions being made. So I don't know, but Sierra Leone doesn't have it for sure, and Ghana doesn't have it. Actually, I don't know if Ghana, I don't know what the number is, but you can at least have 2 as far as I know, because I know people who have 3 with Ghana. Actually, you can at least have 3, because I know people who have 3 with Ghana, and some of it's Sierra Leone, Ghana, US. I've seen other people with Nigeria, Ghana, US. So at the very least, Ghana allows 3 for sure. I have 2 currently, working on a 3rd, maybe even a 4th at some point in time in the future. That all is coming later. So Sheikhu Sheriff says it's going to be difficult in terms of Africa coming together as one country because most Africans are talking about continental unity while people within many countries are fighting for separation. And that speaks to the white settlers of South Africa who are talking about breaking off into their own country. You're right about that. That is happening. King Joseph had an interesting question. Joe, does the Chinese, Indians, and Arabs have a stronghold in Africa? Depends on what you mean by stronghold. Depends on what you mean by Africa. The continent is big, and it really depends. Now, North African people are culturally Arab, so it's hard to say Arabs because that's not a country, that is a grouping. I will say the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia do have a lot of land and are doing a lot on the continent of Africa. The Chinese also have a lot of loans to many countries in Africa, Chinese governments and Chinese private companies. And so if you're beholden to someone when you owe them, that might be considered a stronghold. I would say the Indians, as far as I know, have many businesses. But this is what I do know. People who are wealthy tend to find ways to get close to people in position of power. And so what you find is that does give them special treatment, special abilities when it comes to different things pertaining to whatever governments decide to do. So, you'll see that in different countries around the continent of Africa, where you'll see that there are certain groups that have what seems like unlimited power or sometimes they skip the lines or are able to do things that seem irrational, like get citizenship quickly out of nowhere, things like that. So yeah, I mean, there are many people who have a lot of power. And by the way, there are also many people who don't have any power whatsoever. And they're just there, trying to earn a living. So, I think that you kind of have to think about not the people in general. There are people within these groups that have strongholds. Now, I made a statement about people make moves when they see money. Badina Bibi says that is not considered when diasporans are expected to choose a country sight unseen. Free visa says welcome home, facilitates and boosts tourism and reputation. So, well, no, we're talking about 2 different things, right? We're talking about citizenship versus visiting. By the way, to be very clear, almost every country around the world requires visas from many other countries, they don't just allow anybody to come in. It does require a visa, because a lot of times visas require some sort of a background check, many times. And so, you know, not all skin folk is kinfolk, guys. You guys have all heard that saying. So they can't just open the floodgates and just let anybody in. You also have to think about that, you know. So the idea of requiring a visa, I think, is a smart thing for most countries to do. Now, lowering visa requirements, the visa price, I think the visa is what, $150? Is it $150 for a visa to come to Sierra Leone? So we're talking about different things. Visa versus citizenship. So in your opinion, there should be a free visa. Maybe it should require the same kind of checks, but maybe the visa be free, maybe. But, you know, at the end of the day, the visa process is also a way for governments to make money. You know, governments do have to try to make their money back, especially if you're in a country that doesn't charge too much in taxes. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Jason says, random question. One of our group members came with a young child. How does citizenship work for children of new citizens if they didn't make the trip? Not easy with child. Okay, if you don't know. Yeah, I don't know, actually. So I'm not even going to try to answer that. Aisha, if you know, please answer. And anybody else watching, if you do know, please answer the question on children. I don't know. iTuber12 says, you're doing our country a great service by protecting its reputation. Thank you. Well, I hope I am. I mean, I know sometimes I talk about things that are unsavory, but it's just important to know everything. What I believe is that you should have all the information before you to make an informed decision. That means you need to know warts and all, right? Like, you know, obviously no country is perfect. And as many things that are going wrong in these United States and that have been over the last however many years, it is still a destination for people who still want to come here. You know, we have mass shootings weekly, and people still want to come to this country, send their children to schools in this country. People still go to heavily crowded events. You know, it is what it is. And I think if the United States has so much bad press about it and so much good press, I also just think it's important to speak about all things going on in Sierra Leone. But again, I still recommend buying land in Sierra Leone, visiting Sierra Leone, and eventually moving to the continent of Africa. If that is Sierra Leone or any other country, I am still a big proponent of that. And that is something that I plan to do. So, you know, and I've already put my money where my mouth is in terms of the investments, right? I co-own 5 acres of land. I co-own an investment property and another property technically. And so, and I'm in the process of getting more. So I definitely recommend it. Spear Warrior says, currency based on gold like Swiss have or had would be a major game change. Yeah, I wish, because technically there's a ton of gold in ECOWAS. I mean, Benin, was it Benin that has a ton of gold? Ghana has a ton of gold. Sierra Leone has diamonds. But yeah, like, I don't know if we have gold on our ground too, but like, that'd be great if it was based on gold, for sure. iTuber12 says, I used to be for a common currency. Now I'm not sure. We need a partner only with the serious countries. All these AES stuff might just be the beginning. Guinea is an active border threat. I'm not sure how you feel about the AES, but I am actually in support of the AES. So, or the Sahel states. That is Burkina Faso, Benin. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. Jason says, also West English speaking Cameroon. Surprised I didn't hear more about it in the news. Well, Cameroon is not considered part of West Africa. So that's why we didn't talk about it here. Cameroon, if I'm not mistaken, is considered part of Central Africa. iTuber says, our most famous personality, Vicky Rameau, lives in Ghana too. There's many reasons folks choose Ghana over Sierra Leone. The government would be wise to learn these exact reasons and make changes. But Dina Bibi says she loves First Lady Fatima Bio. King Joseph says, thank you, Joe. You answered my question. iTuber says a $600 fee for the descendants of slaves to reclaim their African citizenship from a place in which sold them into slavery in the first place is a slap in the face. Honesty. Why is our fee any higher? All right, that is a very deep and convoluted response. iTuber 12. Man, that is a tough one. So let's talk about it briefly and then move on, because that's a conversation for a whole nother time. So to be very clear, when the Dutch first came to Africa to trade in sugar, then later gold and many other things, that's what it started as. We as Africans didn't have jail, technically, the way jail is done in the West. So much of what would happen is if you conquered a particular group of people, you would take them, certain people would be taken as slaves, but also people who were thieves, who were committed SA against children, who committed SA against adult women. These people were taken to pay their debt to society. There were times where certain African kings, certain African people did sell their people, but many more times than not, like 90% of the time, it was Europeans taking people. So the idea that like they just sold them into slavery, it wasn't like that was the biggest business in West Africa for Africans. It was the biggest business in West Africa for Europeans. Many Africans were doing it in some cases to protect themselves. Other Africans were doing it because they were just sadistic and this isn't my tribe, it's some other tribe, so I'm going to do it. But it was such a small percentage. Really, the main folks that were perpetrators of this were the Europeans. And so that statement, I feel like there's a lot to unpack, and it still offers a sense of entitlement, which we discussed a little earlier on in this live stream. You know, I get it. I mean, if you feel like it's some sort of a reparations program to give citizenship, I could see that. I could see that. But I don't know, taking a hard stance like that is a tough one because it's a very nuanced discussion, right? Like very nuanced discussion. You know, the way Africa is, and I had this conversation with someone else, it is God, family, tribe. Europeans brought the idea of black and that we were all one people. Now, because we've been subjugated and separated, now we feel more like one people and we're trying to work together as one people. But for a long time, Africa was God, family, tribe. And if you fell outside of that, you were a foreigner. Just how it was. Just how it was. This is how it was. Europeans were the first to create the idea of countries where they pulled together a bunch of different tribes and made large-scale countries and called them countries, right? And so that is a concept that is a little bit different. Now, to your point, I think if Africans saw themselves as one people throughout the entire continent, we probably would have been better prepared to handle the Europeans when they came, and we may not have had this transatlantic trafficking system that was done through the Middle Passage. So, you know, some things to talk about there, but that's a whole nother conversation. Okimute says AES needs ECOWAS. Insecurity there is growing and not good. I don't know if that's the case. The insecurity that it depends on what news you're watching. If you're watching news from the West, it'll make it seem like the insecurity is not good. But if you listen to those leaders who are military leaders, they have made advancements on many of the terrorists that are living in their country. So I'm not really sure that that's the case. I think I might have to push back on that, Okimute. Jason says, talking about the separating different convo, we moved on. Okay. Okay. Spirit Warrior saying, hit that like button. Absolutely. Hit that like button. Thank you, Spirit Warrior. Blueprint has an interesting thought, and we're going to end it on this. America and Europeans should be held account for causing our loss of identity and heritage. And on that note, guys, we have now been on this live stream for 1 hour and 44 minutes. I want to thank you all for joining. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that like button, comment on the replay, subscribe to Authentic African on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok, on Threads, on X. We're everywhere. We're everywhere. And also, Sierra Leone's Killing It is on Instagram. That's the main platform. They do have a YouTube channel, so subscribe to them on YouTube. And they're building a TikTok channel and everything else. So go follow Admire on all her platforms. Follow me and Authentic African on all my platforms. I want to say thank you guys for all the support. You guys have been great and really, really engaging discussion. I wish you all the best. And thank you again. All right, guys. I will leave you with this. No, I won't leave you with that. I will just say thanks for watching. See you all on. I'll see you tomorrow. Actually, so before I go, since all of you are still here, more people are coming. Tomorrow, I am going live with Maya King. Maya King was one of the real estate agents that I went to look at apartments with in Ghana. We're going to talk about why she left Ghana and if she's ever coming back. You know, it's the first time we're going to have this conversation with someone who's moved away from the continent. I myself talked about my story and what happened. We're going to have Maya on. I did a live stream with her a little while back about the price of real estate in Ghana. I also interviewed her. She had been in Ghana a little bit longer than me, about a year longer than I have been. And so we're going to hear from her as to why she left Ghana. So make sure you pay attention. Come back tomorrow to the Authentic African YouTube channel for the live stream where I interview Maya King of Magnate Realty, where she explains to us why she left Ghana. So on that, I want to thank you guys for watching all the way to the end. See you all on the next live stream.